What's happening? Welcome to the Matt Bernier Show on DRFTV. My name is Matt Bernier. You can follow me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. This is the preview edition. We will be taking a look at a couple of interesting things, kind of on polar opposite ends of the spectrum. There will be a little bit of a stakes preview. We'll take a look at the Ohio Derby using the new Classic PPs available over on DRF.com. Show you a little bit of the functionality there. That will also be cut out and used as that stakes preview over on video.drf.com or the Racing Forms YouTube channel. But before we get to that, I want to dive into a new thing the Breeders' Cup is doing this year. There's a number of people that are part of a poll every week about the Breeders' Cup Classic, and the job is to go through and put in your top 10. Who you think the top 10 candidates for the Breeders' Cup Classic would be the beginning of November out at Santa Anita. So this past weekend, this past Monday anyway, was the second iteration of this, and I want to take a look and see how my top 10 compares to the actual poll and the results of the top 10 of all the other voters. So we'll go through, we'll take a look at some of the replays of those horses as well, and again, we'll go over the Ohio Derby a little bit, show you some things there about that race coming up at Thistledown on Saturday afternoon. However you listen to this thing, thanks for doing so. YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, video.drf.com, or the Racing Forms YouTube channel. Please rate, review, and subscribe. You're over on YouTube. Click that subscribe button. Make sure the bell icon's lit up. You get everything that DRF TV has to offer. Give us a little bit of a thumbs up over there as well. Questions, comments, or concerns beneath the video player on YouTube or directly to me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. Something else perhaps going into a week like next week. Next week's going to be a very busy week for a number of reasons, mainly... Well, let's look at it from a work standpoint as well as a racing standpoint. Work-wise, Illman and Beer will both be off, so I'll be trying to run the ship on my own. But also from a racing standpoint, there's a number of big races. They'll all be covered in stakes previews and as well as an out of the gate next week. So maybe for the preview show next week, I'll talk about it again on the recap pod at the beginning of next week. But how about a little Q&A? If there's anything that folks are curious about or have questions about or comments or whatever it may be, I think next week might be a good time to take a look at some of those things before we get ready for Stars and Stripes at Belmont Park, before we get ready for the opening of Saratoga and Del Mar. Maybe a little Q&A thing is going to be a decent enough spot, good time to do that. So if you have any questions or comments or any of that kind of stuff, on top of what the normal instances are, start throwing those in there beneath the video player on YouTube or to me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. Next preview show next week, next Thursday. I'd like it to be a little bit more of a Q&A sort of situation where we can change things up a little bit, given that I'm going to be all over the place as far as the out of the gate show is concerned, as well as the stakes previews are concerned. So I don't want to just keep regurgitating things over and over again. So a little bit of a Q&A. Anything you want to touch on racing-wise, if you have questions, if you have comments, whatever it may be, again, beneath the video player on YouTube or to me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt for that next Thursday, the preview pod next week. We'll go over that, hopefully, if there's enough sort of viewer and listener interaction there. So without further ado, let's get into it. Something a little bit different. The Breeders' Cup Classic rankings, the top 10, 2 weeks in, what the voters suggested and what I suggested. So as I said at the top, the Breeders' Cup is trying something different this year. They are going through and releasing a top 10 poll for the Breeders' Cup Classic week in and week out. Every Monday, a group of voters, they go through, they put in their top 10 for the Breeders' Cup Classic, and on Tuesday, the results come out. I happen to be one of the voters on this little panel of this group, so I figured it would be an interesting sort of exercise, given that this is the second week that we've done this, to see how my top 10 compares and contrasts to the actual results for the top 10 from the aggregate, from everyone voting in this situation. So the top list right here in this little grid, this is the actual top 10 of what the folks voting ultimately chose. You can see the total votes for each of the horses over here in this column, first place votes, and where these horses stacked up 1 week ago and 1 week prior. Now keep in mind, with this only being 2 weeks old, the first week that this was done was following the Belmont Stakes and the Belmont, all the racing festival with the Met Mile and all those other races. And then this following week was just on the heels of the Stephen Foster. So that's why you're probably going to see some names jump up sort of out of the blue based on where they were the week prior. Full disclosure, my top 10 did not change dramatically from week 1 to week 2. Really the only thing that changed was where the horses stacked up. I didn't take anybody out of the top 10, and I didn't add anyone to the top 10 for the reasons I laid out in the recap. The Stephen Foster, I thought it was a fine race. I don't know that it's littered with Breeders' Cup Classic contenders. I want to see more from those horses going forward to perhaps make me change my opinion. Now, I think it's one of those things. Think of it with college football, college basketball, wherever there's a ranking system, but specifically in those two sort of sports. Generally speaking, it takes losses for horses or for teams that are toward the top to end up sort of falling back, and it takes big victories for horses that are a little bit farther back to make up ground. Early on in the season, those things can be magnified because there is not a giant body of work. There's not a large sample size. So we see those instances where, early on in the college football season, late August, you're going to end up having the number one team to play the number 5 team. A few years ago, I remember it was Alabama and Florida State, and Alabama blew the doors off Florida State, and Florida State fell from 5 to 11. Well, did how much really changed in that time? They played one game. Did all of a sudden 6 other teams really improve that much that they're better than them? Or did Florida State run into a buzzsaw in Alabama? What I'm trying to say here is there is some pretty dramatic changes as far as the overall top 10 is concerned. I was just reluctant to go right away and do that because how much really changed from week to week? To me, not a ton. I need to see more as we go through the summer before I really go making dramatic changes. Now, look, this can also change if there's any sort of an injury or defection or anything like that. But just so you know where I'm coming from and how I go through and approach this as far as voting is concerned. You can see that the pollsters, they all ended up having, pollers, whatever the correct term there is. McKenzie is the number 1 horse on the Breeders' Cup Classic top 10 list. I have McKenzie ranked 3rd here. The big thing for me, thought that was going to highlight. Instead, it's going to move it around for me. Let's not do that again. McKenzie, my concern is ultimately the 1.25 miles. There's no question for me about the quality. I think he is arguably the best horse on this list. I just don't know that he gets better as distance goes on, whereas conversely, some of these other horses, I think they get better as the distances get longer and farther. You can see number 2 overall on the list is Thunder Snow. He is my number 1 horse for the Breeders' Cup Classic. Those 2 horses, they showed off in the Metropolitan Handicap on Belmont Stakes Day. We're going to go back and take a look at that replay right now. You can see down here in the Godolphin Silks, that is Thunder Snow. Here in those Pegram, Whiteman, Watson, whoever else I'm missing in that ownership group for the Baffert horse, McKenzie, he's a little bit farther back. The reason I think this was such an impressive effort from both of these horses, one, McKenzie, the obvious. He was a lot farther back than I think most people had hoped he was going to be. But look, a 1/2 mile and 44 and 1, they're moving pretty good out there, cooking with gas. He's now also off the rail. The rail to me is where you wanted to be all all Belmont Stakes weekend. And you see McKenzie's got nowhere to go. He ultimately comes on, finishes second, really puts in a big bid here at the end. The reason I have Thunder Snow rated higher than McKenzie on the Breeders' Cup Classic top 10 list is because I think the fact that Thunder Snow was only defeated by, 1.5 lengths or 2 lengths for all the money, at a mile, off of a long layoff from the Dubai World Cup, at a distance, again, that I just think is entirely too sharp for that kind of horse. I think he's only going to get better as the distances get longer. I think he projects out really well at 1.25 miles. He's won 2 Dubai World Cups. He ran a bang-up race last year in the Breeders' Cup Classic at Churchill. He nearly won the Jockey Club Gold Cup. There's so many things for me to like anyway about Thunder Snow. I just still maintain I think he's a little bit underrated, but based on this poll right here, maybe people are starting to come around on him. You see those 2 were numbers 1 and 2 in the first poll. Nothing changed there. Number 3 was a tremendous change. Now, he got 0 first place votes, but Seeking the Soul jumped from 17 to 3. I was reluctant to do that on the heels of 1 win. Can't show you the replay of the Stephen Foster for reasons that I'm sure you're aware of at this point. I think Seeking the Soul, again, I don't have anything negative to say about this horse. I just wonder, is he better? And I know that sounds silly because he just won it's a grade 2 now, but he would just won a big race at 9 furlongs. I wonder if he's a little bit better going a little bit shorter, and I wonder if he just takes his game to the next level at Churchill Downs. He's going to have to do it at Santa Anita. I'm certainly not saying he is a hopeless long shot in a race like that. I just don't know that he's quite of the top 3, 4, 5 sort of contenders. So for me, I kept him out of my top 10. You see Catholic Boy is ranked number 4. He got 3 first place votes. He was ranked 5th last week. He moves up to 4. I have Catholic Boy 2nd. To me, he is that kind of horse that, say what you will about last year's Breeders' Cup Classic, clearly everything that could go wrong went wrong for him. But this race right here, I have long maintained, I think he's better on dirt than he is on turf. I said it going into this race. This was the Travers last summer up at Saratoga. He goes out there, 1.25 miles, you know the deal. He beats a nice horse in Mendelssohn. Say what you will. We don't need to go back to that whole thing going back and forth. But the idea of Catholic Boy at 10 furlongs on the main track. I think he checks all those boxes. He has the ability to lay close to the pace. And if you're not sold on a horse like Thunder Snow, how about a horse that's a newly turned 4-year-old? Jonathan Thomas has taken his time with him. He came back. He won that Dixie in a race where I don't think he was cranked up and ready to go. I think it was just nothing more than a means to an end. To me, if he can get back to a race like that Travers, and heck, even improve off of it at the distance, I think Catholic Boy is a primetime player for the Breeders' Cup Classic. We move on, 5 and 6 on the list, Vino Rosso and Gift Box. You see Gift Box, he was third last week. He falls all the way to sixth. I believe he had some first place votes last week on the heels of the defeat in Stephen Foster. He falls back. For me, I did. I ended up having him fall back considerably. I had him, I believe, in fifth. Now he's all the way back to eighth for me. It's an instance where, look, like I said in the recap, and you can find that on YouTube or on video.drf.com, I don't think he ran poorly. All things considered, it was a wide trip, the ship, X, Y, and Z, 3 weeks turnaround. I don't think it was a terrible effort from Giftbox. It wasn't a good effort, but I don't think it was a disaster, and I don't think he deserves to be taken out of the top 10. He was moved down considerably on the overall voting list. He was moved down considerably on mine, and there's good news, a lot of time for him to right the ship and get back and prove that he belongs in that sort of top 3 or top 4. As far as Vino Rosso is concerned, I've said it for a while now. I just don't know. This race makes me a little bit unsure because Vino Rosso, I thought maybe all along he was a long-distance horse. Then I thought maybe I was wrong because they brought him back at 7/8 of a mile to start the year on 2 occasions. He won one of them and ran fourth in the other one. And then I watched this race when they ship him out to California, and this finish, I just feel like he and Giftbox are going up and down. So I'm still a little bit unsure of what to do with both of them. The good news is, again, they each have time to prove that they belong in that upper echelon. They're in my top 10. They're clearly squarely in the top 10 of the voters. I believe it sounds like Vino Rosso, they're looking at the Whitney. And I think that would be a very, very nice test because you're likely to have McKinsey. You're likely to have Thunder Snow. Maybe you get some of the horses from the Stephen Foster that show up there. The Whitney's always one of the best races for older horses. That will be a very nice sort of litmus test about where all these horses stack up against one another. You see some other names in here. Omaha Beach, Gunnevera, Quip, War of Will. Quip is obviously another big winner from that Stephen Foster. He finished second. He jumped from 15th to 9th. He cracked the top 10. He did not do that for me. Omaha Beach is number 4 for me because I do think there's a real chance he's just the best 3-year-old of the entire lot. You'll note no Maximum Security is in this list. I moved Maximum Security down a hair simply because, again, it was a matter of, look, I'm not going to totally throw him out on the heels of one loss in that Pegasus, which really felt like nothing more than a means to an end. But I can't reward you. I can't leave you where you are. So I moved him down a few. He is nowhere in the top 10, which surprises me a little bit. If you're going to have some horses like War of Will in here, I feel like you probably should have a horse like Maximum Security. But again, the beautiful thing is this is the overall vote. So it's what the people have chosen. So Maximum Security, I'm not ready to give up on him just yet. Omaha Beach, clearly, I think highly of him. Gift Box, I moved him down a bit. Game Winner is a horse that I'm high on. More and more time goes by. I think maybe he's the best of the Baffert lot. And then Tacitus, I have him rounding things out down here at the bottom. The one horse I haven't touched on yet, he's not in the top 10 here, and he is the X factor to me in this entire division, is this horse that I have at number 5, Catalina Cruiser. Catalina Cruiser, those of you that have listened to this show and have listened to our stakes previews and all those sorts of things over the past handful of years know that last year when he came on the scene, I liked him really early. I believe it was after his second or third lifetime start. I said, this is a racehorse. And then they brought him into a graded stakes race, and he went out there and dusted that field. It was a short field, though. Comes back, dusts another field. The concern I had leading into the Breeders' Cup, and I picked him, was he had never been in any kind of a fight. He had never been in any sort of an instance where he had to overcome adversity. The only time he did was the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, and he was nowhere. So I was a little bit concerned. But you've got to look at the positives, too. He has John Sadler, arguably one of the best, if not top 2 or 3 best right now trainers in the country. He's going to be running at home. Breeders' Cup's at Santa Anita this year. Home base, everything's going to be okay there. Distance is the question for me. I'm still not entirely sure what he is. Is he going to be a one-turn type, or is he going to be able to stretch out in distance? You look at the breeding and you look at the way that he runs, I think added ground is going to be to his benefit. But the big concern for me was he's got to prove that he can overcome some adversity. I'm going to show you the run in the True North. I know this is 6.5 furlongs. This is off of a long layoff. This was the day before the Belmont Stakes on Friday, a day when inside and speed was crucial. And he was on the inside for a bit, Catalina Cruiser, but you're seeing this right now. He's winding up on the outside, and he's coming from about 2 lengths off of it. And the fact that he's able to go and run down 2 nice horses, say what you will about Recruiting Ready and a horse like Strike Power. They're nice horses. It's not like they're bums. And they've got a track sort of advantage. The fact that Catalina Cruiser, off of such a long layoff, is able to go against the grain, buck the trend, and go and get the job done at a distance that's probably a little bit on the sharp side for him. I think this is a very promising effort for this horse, and it makes me wonder that, you know what, feels like we know what most of these horses are. Sans the 3-year-olds. You assume you're going to get improvement from Omaha Beach. You assume War of Will. You assume a horse like Game Winner or Tacitus. Catalina Cruiser, though, we know has run fast. He's beaten older horses, and now he sort of proved to me that he can overcome some adversity. He's the one that I'm most interested in seeing what happens going forward, because I really genuinely don't know. Is he going to be better going longer? Is he going to be better staying shorter? We'll find out in time. To me, Catalina Cruiser's the X factor. I thought that run was good enough to put him in the top 10 squarely. I've had him, I believe the first poll I had him in 6th, maybe 7th. I have him in 5th this week simply because a couple of those horses fell back. So that's just a quick look into my top 10 for the Breeders' Cup Classic, as well as what the results were. This will be something I'll revisit in time going forward, because this is going to happen every week. And I'm curious what your thoughts are. Agree, disagree, who is omitted, who is overlooked, who is overrated? Let me know beneath the YouTube player, or the video player on YouTube, or on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. Keep in mind, too, you don't see Matoli's name in there anywhere. He won that Met Mile we took a look at. It's because I just don't think mile and a quarter doesn't seem like that's in the cards for him. Seems like those sort of shorter races are really what his game is going to be. So again, curious what your thoughts are. Let me know. Let's transition into a little bit of a preview. We'll take a look at the Ohio Derby coming up this weekend. 3-year-olds at Thistledown. Race 9 at Thistledown Saturday afternoon. The Grade 3 Ohio Derby for 3-year-olds. 1.1 miles on the main track, the only track at Thistledown. We'll take a look at this race using the new Classic PPs over on DRF.com. A lot of functionality, a lot of nice, neat features that some of you are unfamiliar with. We'll take a look at some of those and go through this field. We'll take them in post-position order. Before we do that, though, we'll scroll down here, and you'll note that I have the number 4 Global Campaign. I have him listed as toss. It's not because I'm tossing him. It's because he's not going to run. He is scratched from this race, or he's going to scratch. He continues to have foot problems. It's unfortunate because he would have vied for favoritism with Owendale. He goes away. Hopefully we see him sooner than later, but he just keeps having these nagging foot problems. Unfortunately, won't be going in the Ohio Derby. So scratch him. You're down to a field of 6 here, going 9 furlongs. Again, we'll take him right in post-position order. The 1 Math Wizard for Saffie Joseph. This is a nice little horse right here, the 3-year-old son of Algorithms. Blinkers come off for the first time in his career. The Wood Memorial, not a bad effort at 65-1. Really never had a chance in there. Had a hot pace to run at. Didn't work out, one reason or another. Oaklawn Invitational, the first running of that race, relatively close to the pace, closer than he had been against better horses. Again, didn't run poorly, but he didn't run well enough for me to look at him and say he's a legitimate threat in this race, especially when you consider who's breaking just to his outside, the number 2 Owendale for Brad Cox. You're looking at the lifetime PPs right now. If you only want to look at the last 6 races, you click that. Boom, you only get 6 races. You want to take a look at all of his workouts throughout his career. Click that tab, opens everything up. So you have a number of different ways that you can look at these horses here with the new Classic PPs. I like to see all the races and all the workouts because I'm a little bit of a weirdo like that. But hey, look, everybody's got their own thing. Second start off the bench, he runs in the Grade 1 Preakness, gets a hot pace to run at, comes with a big finish on the outside. Say what you will, maybe inside is where you wanted to be. I know some people really have harped on that at Pimlico Preakness Day. I don't really firmly believe that. I think it's always advantageous to be inside, but I don't think that's what cost him the race. Thought he came with his bid on the outside, and he just couldn't quite get there and run down a horse in War of Will. This is a nice horse. He really has proven me wrong because I was very skeptical after this N1X race down at the fairgrounds. Just because the race kind of felt like it came out of nowhere. Then he shows up in the Risen Star, and he's just absolutely nowhere. The Lexington was a big effort from him, no question about it. A mile and a 16th, maybe that helped his cause, but he never looked like a loser out in the clear, albeit against inferior foes. He's going to be facing, I would say, a comparable group to the Lexington. The difference is going to be a much shorter field. And now with the defection of Global Campaign, really feels like there's only one horse that he needs to beat. That's Long Range Toddy. We'll see what we get here from Owendale. Let the price be your guide. He's 9-5 on the line. I'd imagine he's going to be a fraction of that now with Global Campaign being out. You see over here, you can change positions and where you want horses to run. I just like to go through and put them in order the way that I like them. I have him listed as my second pick in the Ohio Derby. My first pick is Long Range Toddy. He's 5-2 on the morning line for Steve Asmussen. John Court has the ride. For me, the big key for this horse is, look, yes, he was impeded in the Kentucky Derby. Say what you will. Maybe he was going to make a run. Maybe he wasn't. I don't think he was. I think it was an instance where he was going to go backwards. But the big piece for me is this right here. Sloppy sealed track, sloppy sealed track. I don't think there's any coincidence that those two races are pretty clearly the two worst from a speed figure standpoint, since he has turned into the horse that we saw win the Rebel Stakes 2 starts back, one of the split divisions there. I think if you get back to this race, the Rebel, I think he's got a giant chance to win this race. He defeated a nice horse in Improbable. Improbable's probably not as good as I think some people have made him out to be. Still a nice horse, but he's not all that in a bag of chips. To me, I look at Long Range Toddy and say the difference and the key for me with this race is if Owendale's going to be coming from the back, Long Range Toddy is going to be able to sit just off the speeds and hopefully get the jump. And I'll just roll the dice and hope that that's enough to turn the tables at a price that's probably going to be somewhere in the 2x range, or maybe even 2.5x of what you're going to get on a horse like Owendale because of the running lines, because of the recency. And you see these. I just think Long Range Toddy's a little bit dirtied up. You get back to this mid-90 race in the Rebel with his tactical ability. I think Long Range Toddy's live in here. Global Campaign, again, is expected to scratch from this race. Going for Gold goes out here. This is a horse that's a maiden through 4 lifetime starts, career best fig of 72. The blinkers go on. They're going to stretch him out in distance. Not a heck of a lot for me to offer as far as real reason to consider this horse a contender. Local connections, but it's still one of those instances I think he's in way too tough. The 6 Bethlehem Road I think is probably, if you're looking for an alternative outside of the big two, maybe it's Bethlehem Road, because this is a horse that has done nothing wrong in 3 lifetime starts. He's gone right to the front in all 3 races. He set a fast pace here in the stakes race at Parks most recently. Went on, got the job done. My big concern with him, he changed leads very early on the far turn, and I want to know what happens when he gets thrown into the deep end and there are better horses that come and confront him. It's one thing to turn away a horse in Mount Travers or some of these other runners that are running at Parks. It's another thing to turn away a horse like Long Range Toddy. Okay, you put him away. Great. Now you got to deal with Owendale. Bethlehem Road. Again, if you're looking for a little bit of a larger price in this race, maybe he is the answer. For me, I picked him 3rd. And Dare Day. Another one, local connections here, stretching out in distance from 5.5 to 8 furlongs. This one looks a little bit better on paper than the other horse we just spoke about, but it's still an instance he's going to need to overcome the pace situation because both of his wins gate to wire fashion. I assume he's going to be sent out of there once the gates break. And I think you just go out there and you try to hang around as long as you possibly can. I'm not sold about the distance. I'm also not sold about the class. He's 15-1. But again, if you're looking for just a wild card in here, why not the Ohio bred Dare Day? For me, I've made it pretty clear. Long Range Toddy is my selection in here. I picked him 1st over Owendale in 2nd, and in 3rd I have the 6-horse Bethlehem Road. If you're curious, if there's anything else that goes into these numbers over here on the right side, well, if you come up here, you can click on Wagering and Live Video. When the race goes on, you can pull up the live feed here for Thistledown. You can go through, you can make your wagers right here. Put everything together, whatever you want. My wagers right now, $2 to win on the 3. You click Bet Now. When you're logged into your DRF Bets account, goes right over there. It's a beautiful thing. If you don't like my analysis, you don't like the way that I look at the race, you click on News and Analysis. You get stories over here. Nicole Russo touching on the unfortunate situation with Global Campaign where he won't run. And then also talking about Owendale and Long Range Toddy. Over here to the right, you have selections from a number of different handicappers from the Daily Racing Form. And if you don't want anything, you just want your own analysis, your own opinions, you click on Only PPs, you get all this stuff. You can write in trip notes, you can write in race notes, whatever you want. It's all there. And if you're someone that likes to mark up the PPs with a pen, do it on paper. If you're not, you click on this, view print PPs over here, you see the PDF button, you click single race, and bang, it's going to pop up right here. It's something that you can print right off your computer. You get your PPs in just the fashion that you'd like them. One other thing, if you're curious about some numbers, some stats, click on statistics, show you jockey stats, trainer stats, closer looks, X, Y, and Z, you name it. You can find it all right here in the drop-down bar in the statistics box. Race number 9 at Thistledown on Saturday afternoon, the Grade 3 Ohio Derby, 9 furlongs on the main track at Thistledown just outside of Cleveland. I'm going to go with Long Range Toddy. There we go. We'll button things up on that note. The Ohio Derby. You're also going to have a number of other great stakes races this weekend. You got the Grade 1 United Nations at Monmouth Park. You got a few other stakes races at Monmouth on Saturday afternoon. You got great racing out at Santa Anita. You name it, all over the place. We've got a lot of good stuff leading into next week. You're going to have Queen's Plate. You have a number of big things. And we get closer and closer to those summer boutiques. We get closer to Del Mar. We get closer to Saratoga. Questions, comments, concerns beneath the video player on YouTube or directly to me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. And again, as I said at the top, please send me some stuff, whether it's Q&A, just comments that you want me to chirp about, whatever it is. Because next week's preview pod, I'd like to have some sort of a listener involvement here. So if you're a listener, you watch, leave some comments for me. Let me know what you think, whatever the case may be. If you don't like my top 10 list for the Breeders' Cup Classic in that poll, if you don't like the overall poll, if you think that those things are a little bit off, maybe a horse is overrated, underrated, let me know. We'll chirp about it. We'll talk about it a little bit, chop it up in the preview pod next week. However you listen, YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, video.drf.com, as well as Spotify. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Please rate, review, and subscribe. YouTube, click subscribe. Make sure the bell icon's lit up. Give us a thumbs up over there. Again, follow me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. I will be back with the recap pod the beginning of next week. We'll go over these races and then some. And again, as always, best of luck this weekend. However you play, whatever you play, and wherever you play. This has been the preview edition of the Matt Bernier Show.